Welcome to The Bitter Witness.
Don't be scared.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Rebecca, and I'm your host for The Bitter Witness. I hope you've had a good week. I've had a hot couple of weeks. It is so bloody hot here in Ontario. I'm not made for this heat. I'm a woman of the fall. Still warm enough for shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops, but not cold enough that I need a sweater. So if anyone knows a place like that in the world with that kind of climate year-round, let me know, because that will become my dream destination. I have decided that for the summer months, I'm going to publish episodes bi-weekly. I'm going to enjoy some family time and take my time doing the research and writing of the episodes because, well, it's summer. And who wants to be indoors for that much of it? But come September, we will go back to weekly episodes, or I guess I should say as close to weekly episodes as I can. Well, that's about it for my little corner of Ontario. Let's get the business out of the way, shall we? If you like this episode or any episode, please head on over to the Patreon page and give the show some love. For less than a personal misting fan, you can help me to continue bringing you episodes each week. You can also support the show on Spotify, and don't forget to give the show a 5-star review over on Apple. Apparently, it helps the show in the algorithm, which is too crazy for my sun-fried brain to even try and comprehend. Like, follow, and share the show on whatever platform you're listening to. Stop by our Facebook or YouTube page and leave a comment or share a post with everyone you know, or don't know for that matter. Everyone is welcome here. That's enough of the business. Let's get to this week's case. The dogs are sleeping behind me, so Puppy ASMR will be brought to you by both Miley and Piper this week. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, and relax while I tell you about the case of the Taco Bell murder. The camaraderie that often blossoms between coworkers is forged in shared tasks, small triumphs, and daily routines. It typically forms a bond of mutual support and understanding. It's a relationship built on proximity and shared experience. The case we are looking at today involves a crime where such a bond is shattered, where a life is extinguished for something as trivial as money. Today's case reveals a chilling abyss of human depravity. It speaks to such chilling, reprehensible lack of regard for human life that it transcends mere desperation, veering instead into a realm of pure, unadulterated callousness. As we grapple with the brutal murder of Michelle Van Ness and the cold wounding of 3 of her co-workers, we are left to ponder a difficult question. Do these perpetrators deserve sympathy? To be spared from the death penalty because of their ages at the time of the crime? The struggle that will consume you may just prove to be deeply disturbing, even incomprehensible. For in the end, when faced with an act of such cold, calculated brutality, where some deem others' existence to be so utterly worthless, will you be able to sleep soundly, knowing that monsters like these are still breathing the same air as you? The Taco Bell restaurant, located at 1408 Belleville Road in Daytona Beach, Florida, was a popular hangout for teens in 1992, specifically many of the teens who attended Warner Christian Academy. The school was a short 7-minute drive from the Taco Bell. In fact, several teens who attended the academy worked at the Taco Bell and the neighboring stores and fast food restaurants in the area. Michelle Van Ness was 17, a cheerleader, a straight-A student, beautiful, and had dreams of becoming a pediatrician. Michelle was working the closing shift at the Taco Bell on May 9, 1992. She was working along with 3 other teens, Derek Mason, 16, Kimberly Gordon, 18, and Gary Robinson, 19. Michelle had actually taken this shift for one of her friends who had a prom to attend that night. Once the Taco Bell had closed about 2 a.m., the 4 teens were busy carrying out their duties, cleaning the restaurant, and preparing everything for the opening shift. We all know the amount of work that happens in a restaurant after you get that last customer out the door. Derek and Michelle were carrying the garbage from the back door of the restaurant to the dumpsters. As they were walking towards the dumpsters, they noticed a brown station wagon parked right beside it. And Michelle and Derek got spooked and turned around to head back inside the restaurant to safety. As soon as Michelle and Derek turned around to head back into the restaurant, 2 young males approached them brandishing weapons, both wearing surgical gloves. Derek stated that he could feel the barrel of the revolver being pushed into his back. The 2 armed men instructed Michelle and Derek to walk back inside the Taco Bell. Once inside, one of the attackers locked the back door, and the other found the other 2 employees, Kim and Gary, and forced them back into the kitchen with Michelle and Derek. The attacker holding the knife pulled Kim from the group of 4 and told her to open the safe. The attacker holding the gun kept his weapon pointed at the 3 remaining teens. Both attackers kept telling all 4 employees that if everyone just did as they said, no one would get hurt. They only wanted the money and then they were going to leave. Once Kim had emptied the safe and handed over the money, the attacker holding the gun brought her back to the group. At that point, the attacker holding the gun asked the 4 teens if any of them would like a cigarette. Kim took a cigarette. She stated later that she was hoping that by having a smoke, she would calm down a little bit. But before Kim could finish the cigarette, the attacker holding the knife began securing the teens' hands behind their back. Michelle, Kim, Derek, and Gary were absolutely terrified as they were herded inside the freezer. Michelle was shaking with fear. She was crying, and she told the others that she was so scared that she was about to be hurt. Once all 4 of the employees were inside the freezer, the man with the gun looked at them and said, "Everything will be fine. We just need to take one final precaution." And immediately he shot Derek in the mouth. The instant Derek fell to the ground, he pointed the gun at Gary and shot him in the chest over his heart. After Gary fell, he moved to Michelle and shot her in the right side of her head. When Michelle went down, he turned the gun towards Kim, who was absolutely beyond terrified. But when he pulled the trigger, the gun jammed. He pulled the trigger again. Nothing. Kim was sobbing and begging for her life at this point. When the gun didn't fire for the 3rd time, the man holding the knife walked over to the man with the gun and handed him his knife. The 2 attacked Kim, threw her on the ground, the one holding her head still so the other could jump on her back and stab her in the back of the head. But when Kim didn't die instantly, the man on her back was frustrated and plunged the knife into the center of her back. Kim immediately went unconscious. The 2 men exited the Taco Bell and hopped into the waiting station wagon beside the dumpsters, where their getaway driver was waiting with the engine running. The 3 drove away into the night. Back inside the Taco Bell, the 4 teens were all clinging to life with every ounce of strength they had. Gary, who had been shot in the chest, was somehow able to wriggle himself out of the clothesline that he was tied with and made his way out to the front of the restaurant and got a phone and called 911. This is the 911 call that Gary made.
911, what's the emergency?
We've been robbed. We've all been shot. We need an ambulance right away. And police.
How long ago this happened?
About 10 minutes. Everybody's been shot. Hurry up.
What's your name?
Gary.
How many people?
4.
Where were they shot?
I was shot in the chest. One in the mouth, one in the head, one stabbed in the back of the neck.
This is the Taco Bell?
Yes.
And who these people were?
I don't know who they were, but I can describe them.
Are you an employee?
Yeah.
Okay, what would the suspects look like?
Oh, man. Both of them were kind of tall. One of them was dark-haired.
Were they white males, black males?
White male. I don't know how much I can talk. It was shot like in the heart side.
And this happened 10 minutes ago?
Yeah.
And where's everybody now?
2 of them are still in the cooler. One of them looks like he's dead.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, they were white males?
White males. One of them had a tattoo on his right shoulder with a burning heart. Is someone on their way?
They're on their way. I need to give you a description.
One tall, dark-haired, had a burning heart on his right shoulder. Tattoo.
Have a burning heart?
Yeah, it was a heart and it was on fire on top. And a mustache and like a scruffy beard, not really a whole beard, just like not shaven.
Okay, what does this other guy look like?
He was blonde. He was unshaven also. He was on the tall side.
Okay, did you see any vehicle?
No.
Okay, what type of weapons did they have?
A small revolver.
The strength of this young man is unreal. And the 911 operator exclaiming, "Oh my God, oh my God," just shows you how horrific and horrifying this whole situation is. People who are 911 operators are trained not to react in emergencies and to stay calm and collect information from the caller. But this crime even shook her for a few seconds. And Gary, the fact that he had descriptions of the attacker and was able to convey that to the operator was just amazing. Gary had been shot in the chest, just a few centimeters from his heart. Gary, you, my friend, are a badass, and you saved 2 of your friends' lives with your courage and bravery. And by the way, Gary had only worked at the Taco Bell for 3 days when this attack happened. At the time of the attack, Gary was working 3 part-time jobs to pay for his college. The 4 teens were rushed to the hospital. Derek had a gunshot wound above his upper lip on the right-hand side of his face. Kim had been stabbed in the back of her head and the center of her back. Michelle had a gunshot wound to the right side of her head. Because of Gary's description of the men, the police knew they were looking for at least 2 men, one with a tattoo of a burning heart on his shoulders. But when they spoke with Derek after he stabilized at the hospital, he told the police that he had recognized one of the attackers. It was a teenager named Anthony Farina, a former employee of the Taco Bell. Anthony had been fired about a month earlier for not showing up for a shift. That's why he knew to grab Kim and take her to the safe, because she was the shift supervisor. Police immediately started calling other employees that worked at the Taco Bell, asking them if they knew where Anthony Farina lived or hung out. One employee of the Taco Bell, a Carmen Wollstenholm, informed the police that she had been kind of friends with Anthony when he worked at the Taco Bell. She stated that Anthony had been nicknamed Crazy by other coworkers because of his long curly hair and the way he would clown around while at work. She told police that the two had become really close when he first started working there. She stated, "He was always real nice to me. He never talked about his parents or any family, though, except for his kid who lived in Arkansas." Carmen decided to do a little private investigating on her own, and she started calling around to friends of Farina's and eventually found out that he was known to be staying in different sleazy motels on the outskirts of Daytona Beach with his younger brother, Jeffrey. No one was really sure which one he was currently staying in, though, as the two Farina brothers were continually getting kicked out for not paying rent. And I don't know if I've told you this, but at this moment, Anthony Farina is 18 years old and Jeffrey Farina is 16. So they are exactly the same age as their victims. Carmen started calling all of the sleazy motels and found out that the Farinas were registered at Raleigh's Court Motel on Ridgewood Avenue in nearby Holly Hill, which on the map, it looks to me to be a sort of neighborhood or suburb just outside of Daytona Beach in Florida. Carmen decided to go out looking for Anthony and his brother, which, please, don't ever do this. Leave the police work to the police. These shit pigs were dangerous. I know Carmen was trying to help, but honestly, making the phone calls to the friends and the motels would have been more than enough, and really even that might have put her in danger. But Carmen and her sister set out heading for Raleigh's Court Motel. When they arrived at the motel, the girls decided just to drive by and see if they could find Anthony's car. And they did. It was parked in one of the room's parking spots. Finally, and thankfully, Carmen and her sister had a moment of clarity, and they decided to drive to the Shell station next to the motel and call the police. Carmen's sister went to the payphone to call the police, but while she was calling the police, Carmen noticed that Anthony's car was pulling out of its parking spot. It turned into the same gas station where Carmen and her sister were. Anthony got out of the car, pumped some gas, and walked inside the store. Inside the car was Jeffrey Farina and John Henderson. By this time, the call to the police was finished, and Carmen had placed herself inside the store. Carmen, I love you, girl, but you are killing me. You are goddamn well killing me. Don't go in the store. Stay in your car and wait for the police. They were on their way. Oh my God. What if you don't know if he's armed. He could take you hostage and kill you. When Anthony walked into the store, he immediately saw Carmen, who was pretending to browse the shelves of the store. Anthony walked up to her and, as casual as a pair of jean shorts and a tank top, looked at her and said, "What's up?" Just moments after that interaction, police swarmed the gas station and took all three suspects into custody. All three were charged with 4 counts of attempted murder. Thank God. My nerves are shot to hell. Carmen, I'm not going to give you the obligatory mom lecture that should be inserted here, but you are never allowed to do anything like this ever again for the rest of your life. Ever. Ugh, my heart. The arrest of the suspects happened just 10 hours after the attack, but the charges would change within mere hours of the arrest to 1 count of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. You see, Michelle never regained consciousness, and a few hours after the attack, her family had to make the devastating decision to remove life support. Kim, Gary, and Derek would all recover, albeit painful, and all would have to live with the trauma caused by these two monsters. Kim was interviewed from the hospital about a week after the attack, and she stated that as each employee was being gunned down, the others were pleading and screaming and begging for their lives. But both attackers just kept silent and continued shooting each of them one by one. She said that the one holding the knife, which was Anthony Farina, was actually smirking, as the one holding the gun, which was Jeffrey Farino, just was stone-faced, and his eyes were dead, like there was nothing in there. And he just continually shot each of her coworkers. The horror that these children went through. And they're children. I know they're teenagers, they're young adults, but they're still babies. Once the police got all three suspects down to the station, all three signed letters of confession regarding the murder and the attempted murders. According to the confessions, the three only wanted to rob the restaurant, and they stated that the only reason they murdered Michelle and tried to murder Derek, Kim, and Gary was because they wanted to eliminate any possible witnesses. You smell that? That smells like a great big old pile of shit pig bullshit right there. I'll tell you why later. Let me just let you in on the level of genius that we are dealing with these two Farina brothers. While these two morons were sitting in handcuffs in the back of the police car outside of the gas station where they were just arrested for attempted murder, and murder, these two Einsteins decided that it would be a good time to start critiquing their crime. You heard that right. Anthony turned to Jeffrey and said, "We should have done a better job of getting rid of the witnesses. We should have slit all their throats." The two started giggling. Jeffrey stated that they should have worn ski masks or scarves or something to cover their faces so no one would have known who they were. And the two continued giggling about it. And of course, they're in the back of a police car, so the entire conversation was recorded by the cameras inside the police car. And the prosecutors played that video for all of the jury to see and hear at trial. Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Thank God for stupid criminals. The prosecutor's office decided pretty quickly to try Jeffrey as an adult. Remember, Jeffrey is just 16. Anthony was 18 and John, the getaway driver, was 23. The prosecution also decided to seek the death penalty against all three of them. The getaway driver, John Henderson, didn't want to go to trial, and naturally, of course, didn't want to receive the death penalty. So he had his defense lawyer get right over to the prosecutor's office and let them know that he wanted to cooperate with them in return for them removing the death sentence off the table. According to John, he claimed that he had no idea that the Farina brothers were planning to kill or hurt anyone. He was only told they were only going inside to rob the Taco Bell in order to get gas money for Anthony Farina to get to Arkansas to see his child. Prosecutors agreed, and John received a sentence of life. I can't find John Henderson in the Florida inmate search. So as far as John Henderson is concerned, I don't know if he's actually still in prison or if he's been released or transferred. The two Farina brothers were tried together. All survivors and some of Michelle's family came out to the trial and testified. After 3.5 hours, the jury came back with guilty for both brothers. The jury also recommended that both Farina brothers should receive the death sentence. The judge agreed and upheld the jury's decision by sentencing both Anthony and Jeffrey Farina to death. Anthony's death sentence has been struck down twice on appeal. The first time was because apparently one juror in the potential jury pool was excluded and they shouldn't have been. After that appeal happened, Anthony had to be resentenced. At that resentencing hearing, the judge reinstated the death penalty for him. Then a second appeal came through, and this one had the death sentence being struck down again because according to the appeals court, the prosecutor of the case had made improper biblical references during the sentencing phase of the original trial. I'm going to talk about those improper biblical references in just a second. But after this appeal was successful in getting the death sentence struck down, the prosecutor, who wasn't the same prosecutor as during the trial, decided to make a deal with Anthony Farina. If Anthony Farina would agree to life in prison with no parole, they wouldn't go after him again for the death sentence. Anthony agreed, and currently he is in Madison Correctional Institution in Madison, Florida. He will be 52 this year, and he will stay there until his last breath on this earth. The alleged improper biblical references that were made by the prosecutor, well, I don't feel that they were actually improper, but you will have to make that decision for yourself. During the sentencing phase of the original trial, the Farina's defense attorneys brought in a prison preacher to testify that both the brothers had found Jesus while in prison. They were born again. Hallelujah. Yeah, them and every other prisoner ever. Anyways, while this preacher was on the stand, he stated that even when Jesus was on the cross being crucified, he gave forgiveness to the two criminals on either side. The prosecutor stood up and asked the preacher, "But even though Jesus on the cross forgave the criminal who was being crucified next to him, he didn't set him free or spare him from a death by crucifixion, did he?" That's it. That is what got this death sentence struck down, which, to me, I think that was completely appropriate. The defense brought in a preacher to testify, and that witness who was testifying brought up the crucifixion. The prosecution has to be given an opportunity to question what the witness is testifying to. But unfortunately, I'm not a judge or an appeals court judge in Florida, so it's not for me to decide. The first thing that happened with Jeffrey's death sentence was there was a ruling that sentencing juveniles to death was cruel and unusual punishment. So with that, Jeffrey's death sentence was commuted to life without parole. But then the United States Supreme Court found that a sentence of life without parole for a juvenile was also cruel and unusual punishment. So because of those two rulings, Jeffrey is now serving a life sentence with the possibility for consideration of parole in 2027 at Wakulla Correctional Institution in Crawfordville, Florida. That's in 2 years, people. A few days after this episode comes out, Jeffrey will be celebrating his 50th birthday. And maybe, just maybe, a little hint of poetic justice. Jeffrey will be celebrating this milestone birthday just as he should, alone and inside a cement box. And that, my friends, is the case of the Taco Bell murder. My thoughts. There is no way that I will ever believe that the two Farina brothers had anything else in mind except murdering Anthony's coworkers. These two went there with the plan to kill whoever was working at the Taco Bell that night. They arrived with a loaded gun and a knife and clothesline. If they hadn't planned on killing the workers, they would have at least tried to disguise their faces, and they would have covered any distinguishing marks like the tattoo on the shoulder. They both wore surgical gloves, so they were trying to leave no fingerprints. They cared about being identified by the authorities, but not by the workers of the Taco Bell. And Anthony worked at the Taco Bell, so he knew he would be recognized. These two shit pigs, and let's be honest, that's what they are, shit pigs, had absolutely no regard for the terror they caused or the pain and horror they unleashed on those 4 innocent teenagers that night. There is no word that I have come across as of yet in the English language that would properly convey the evil that is these two Farina brothers. Personally, I don't feel that either of these monsters were deserving of having their sentences commuted from death to life. And just because Jeffrey was 16 at the time of the crime, he may actually get a chance to leave prison and live amongst the rest of us like a human, which, by the way, he is not. If you stop for one moment and just imagine the horror and the terror that would have been inflicted on any of those teenagers inside that freezer, I don't know that anyone could feel that it's justice to have their death sentences commuted to life in prison. Wouldn't it be nice if just once we could see a criminal reap what they sow? I know, that's not how the justice system works, and that's not really rehabilitative. But cases like this, where there is such a high level of trauma and lives, innocent lives, are harmed and taken, just makes me wish that every once in a while we could see a little eye for an eye. What an absolute horrible, horrible case. To think that one of them might actually walk free is actually quite terrifying, because we don't know what's happened to this idiot while he's been in jail. And he was the one holding the gun. The young one, he was the one who shot everyone, and they're going to let him out. That's ridiculous. Anyway, remember, we're going to an episode every 2 weeks for the summer, so I will see you all in 2 weeks. Get out there and enjoy the summer with your loved ones. And with that, I think we'll leave it there for this week. Stay safe, get your pap test done, and enjoy your day today. This has been a Bitter Witness production.